event from CDOT for our Change Management Community of Practice, formerly known as the Public Sector Change Management Group. And we're going to be reaching out to all of you today after the meeting, the survey, to kind of find out more about what you'd like to call this group. My clicker's not working.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Hold on, everyone. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties.
Point it at my computer because that's where
it's not seeming to click.
Oh, you might need to click on the.
Oh, you've got a pop-up. That would be why, right?
Click on the extended screen.
Sorry, everyone. We'll get started in just a second. Yay. Okay. So we're in a new building. This is our first day in CDOT's new headquarters in Denver. So we're having a little bit of technical issues as we get used to all our new technology here. So if you want to just talk or say anything during the event, please remember to unmute your microphone or your phone. And we want to have a good end of session FAQ time and have a lot of discussion at that point. And that's how you do it. If you're in the Zoom window, you can see the microphone down at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You can click that to unmute. And we also wanted to say welcome because Megan and I are the new leaders along with our entire intern team. And I know you can't see everybody yet. Maybe we'll zoom out a little bit. But we are the new leadership team for this new community of practice. So we're very excited. So the purpose and direction of this group is basically we're agnostic or a multi-method group of change management professionals. We learn from each other and want to build our knowledge from each other and inspire and lead change throughout the world. And most importantly, we want to ensure that those impacted by change are successful with that change, every single individual. So I picked out this, preparing for today's event, I picked out this quote. I thought it was very appropriate. Inevitable and not always controllable. And we all know what that feels like when we can't control. But we can. But what we can be controlled is how you manage, react to, and work through the change process. I haven't read Kelly Morgan's book yet, but that's where the quote came from, was Kelly Morgan. I missed. I think I'm going to go ahead and grab that and read it soon. But I just wanted to throw a quote out to get today's event started, along with Alex's joke from this morning. Again, after the event, we're going to send out a survey to everybody that's attended today. Your voice is so important to us. We want to get a lot of feedback so we can add the most value to you moving forward.
Can I chime in on that? So a community of practice really works best when everybody contributes and shares. And so when we have the open forums and when there's opportunities to ask questions, don't be shy. We really want to hear from you. And that's what's really going to add to the richness of this event.
Yes, most definitely. The more voices added to the whole entire discussion, the better. And again, so this is our agenda for today. Actually, I'm going to hand it over to Megan.
Oh, okay.
Go forward.
Great.
It's
yes.
all yours. Sorry about that,
So, warm welcome from Michelle and I. We're super excited to have you all participating in this, and we hope to continue to have really successful and growing bi-monthly meetings. And then Nichelle Rogers is going to give us a little bit of information about their continuous improvement efforts and how they've integrated change management from the Office of Natural Resource Revenue. And then we've got Greer, who is in Washington, and he's zooming in, and he's going to tell us about their change journey as well. And then it's your opportunity to chime in, ask questions, give us your feedback, what's worked for you, since we all probably have similar situations and struggles. So definitely chime in, and then we'll close up kind of talking about what we want the next steps to look like in terms of our community. And I'll hand it over to Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me today. I'm really excited to be here on your inaugural day.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, my name is Nichelle Rogers. I am the supervisor for communication and change management at the Office of Natural Resources Revenue, otherwise known as HONOR. So it's an honor to be here today with you. For today's discussion, I'll talk a little bit about honor, who we are, and then go directly into our change journey, an overview of our continuous improvement efforts, and then talk about some of our challenges and our successes, and then open it up for any questions or answers. So a little bit about honor. Excuse me. We're the second or third largest non-tax revenue generator every year for the United States. We usually compete against customs, and IRS is always typically number one. So our revenues come from the production and sale of oil, gas, and any other natural resources generated in the United States and off of our coastal shores. We have about 600 to 600 employed at Honor in 6 different locations. They include in Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, here in Denver, and of course, Washington, D.C. And we're made up of accountants, auditors, minerals revenue specialists, program analysts, petroleum engineers, and a lot more. The special part about Honor, I think we might be long distance cousins a little bit. So the money that comes into us and that we distribute back to the United States, about $2.51 billion goes to the taxpayers through the general fund and treasury. But the states get about split up between the different states, $1.44 billion. And that provides funding for local schools, roads, libraries, public buildings, and general operations. And for the state of Colorado, there's a 50% return on for revenues that are given to the state. So as the state deems necessary for spending, that's how it gets cut across the board. But we also provide funding to Western water users through the Bureau of Reclamation. $959 million went to the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which keeps our parks and recreation places up to date and looking good. And then our biggest and one of our most important groups is to American Indian tribes and tribal individual mineral owners. This is often a primary source of income for these folks. So what we do is really important to us because of that. We know we are impacting individual lives that way. So I think, again, we hit a couple of other things like the Historic Preservation Fund that saves our historic buildings, neighborhoods, communities, that type of thing. But I think because of the money that gets put into our roads and through our states, that might be how we're related a little bit, long distance. So moving into Honor's change journey. Honor was created, I've been working for Honor for 19 years, and if we have any mathematicians, I started when I was 10, okay? But Honor was actually created in 2010, so how have I been working there 19 years? Well, in 2010, you all might remember the tragedy that is the Deepwater Horizon event that happened offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. We were part of Minerals Management Service back then, and that event was the catalyst for removing us out of Minerals Management Service. And that major reorganization was really the start of what we know today as our continuous improvement effort. We've done total quality management and other type of improvement efforts in the past, but that event really was the catalyst for how we view continuous improvement today. So our management vision from that time period tied with the employee engagement, and that employee engagement included surveys, it included listening groups, it included a gallery walk where employees could write down their thoughts. That engagement led us to creating our mission and our vision. And then about 5 years after we were created, we looked at our organizational values because we wanted to create a bigger journey and create a bigger tie to the organization. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about our vision and our strategic direction, as well as our organizational values. So this lovely image here, one of our employees is a genius at building arts and crafts type of things. This is our pretty fun visual of our vision and our 3 strategic outcomes: professionalism and integrity, accurate revenues and data, and industry compliance. The 5 post lines that you see there are the strategic objectives that help us get there. And those really are centered around, and I'll talk about those in a little bit in the next slide here, but they really are the foundation for how we get things done. In addition to creating these 5 strategic objectives and the direction, Our employees were pretty focused and interested in working on 6 areas of interest. That includes creating an integrated strategy to encourage payer compliance, improve the talent, the knowledge management, and organizational culture and structure of the organization, improve our collaboration with our partners, who includes other DOI agencies, and then also we have a state and tribal royalty audit committee. Improve the speed and accuracy of the payments that we get, so of course we can disperse that faster, and then improve system support and prepare for our future. So I'll go a little bit more into those strategic objectives here. So this is our framework. This is what we use every 6 months in our organization to butt our new priorities, new initiatives, and things up again. So of course you see our vision, excellence in natural resources revenue at the top, and then our core mission for the benefit of all Americans, which includes all of us here in this room and watching. We collect, account for, and verify natural resource revenue and energy revenues through the states, American Indians, and the U.S. Treasury. Those 3 strategic outcomes: companies timely comply, we get accurate revenues and data, and then a big one for us is that the public trusts what we do. So the professionalism and the integrity that we carry as an organization, we want to be trusted in that. We are stewards of a very large amount of money, and so we want to be trusted in that mission. The strategic objectives that are below, so probably can see it on the screen. Strengthen management practices. We want to have effective performance within the organization. Integrate our core business processes to manage the revenues that come in, and enforce compliance. And then of course we want to improve the relationships that we have with all of our stakeholders. In order to do that, we maximize our collaboration, communication, and integration. And we also have to be very careful about our risk and ensuring internal controls. That's very huge for any kind of audit agency. Maximizing our workforce effectiveness, and targeting and deploying tools and support that helps our employees do their jobs is really critical as well. That is a foundational piece. We can't do our core mission work if those tools and support aren't there to help the employees do the job. So every time we meet to talk about our strategic priorities, this framework is on the table, because we have to make sure any new initiatives fit into what we're trying to do. So in 2015, or prior to 2015, along with that strategic framework, we used to have guiding principles. And the guiding principles, they're just, even the word guiding principles just isn't very motivating, you know? It doesn't give you that connection, that feel good to the organization. And so in 2015, we sat down with our employees and asked them, what do they think about our organization when they think of who we are, value-wise? And so these 5 values were the outcome of that engagement with our employees. From left to right, capitalize on our diverse strengths, engage and be accountable, communicate for shared understanding, adapt to change, commit to progress, and build trust through excellence. So adapt to change, commit to progress is where continuous improvement lives, right? That's exactly where we live. But we also, in everything that we do as a continuous improvement organization, we strive to include all of those elements in anything that we do. So going into the continuous improvement overview, there's a lot of acronyms on this chart, and I apologize for that. Couldn't fit the whole names here, but the idea of our continuous improvement process really started with working with special groups, okay? It wasn't every change effort. It was more for what we have strategic review teams and implementation work groups. And so this process is specific to that piece of continuous improvement. So on the left-hand side, in the very top-hand corner, there's a purple box that says ideas generated. This comes from employee surveys. It comes from our external audit agencies like Office of Inspector General or Government Accounting Office. It might even come from our partners where they give us ideas. My office, which is Communication Change Management, will get the idea. We'll sit down with the person who created it and go through a presentation to look at cost-benefit analysis. What's the justification? Why do you think we need it? Where's the pain points? How will you measure success? We talk about all of those things. And then if we recommend that The idea moves forward to some governance boards. The governance board's program office, that is the actual program area that works on a particular function. The ITGB and the HCGB, that's our Information Technology Governance Board, and our Human Capital Governance Board. CSC is our Compliance Strategy Council. Those three boards are very particular in what they look at, whether it's personnel issues, whether it's the IT type of stuff, or whether it's mission work. The CSC is specific to our missions of collecting, accounting for. And then the other three bodies are management groups. Most of the ideas we have go through the OLT, which is our honor leadership team. Once they've reviewed the ideas, if they think that there's more work that needs to be done, if there's not enough information for them to make a decision, we will create a strategic review team. That review team lasts 3 to 6 months. They do the research, they come back with real recommendations. If they think the idea is implementable on site, they create an implementation work group, and that team does just that. They go and they make that idea happen. Sometimes those groups, when they're doing the work, they find out that, hey, maybe it doesn't work exactly like this, so we'll make a new recommendation based on what we've tried to implement. And then it just goes right back through the cycle again. All the time that all of this is happening, there's communication it's happening. Whether it's with employees to get their ideas, if it's with management to keep them informed of what's going on and what we're bringing to the table, or if it's with senior managers to get their sponsorship, get their buy-in so that we can move the ideas forward. Yeah, I gotta click back on there.
Oh, yeah. You got it, Megan?
There we go. Thank you. So, so in all of that, of course, it looks very pretty. It looks like it flows very easily, but of course we have challenges like everybody else.
Yeah.
Our biggest challenge is really finding the time and the resources for innovation and change, especially in climates where we have decreasing federal budgets. It's harder to get employees and resources to do the special initiatives, even if they will help mission work. It's still a kind of a you know, butting of the heads at the management table when it comes to making decisions on these things. The other thing is putting people first. What comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? A lot of times change efforts at honor start with an updated regulation that requires a change in process, or our systems are outdated, so we need to update technology. Well, when that happens, we often forget to talk to the people first. We go with the change, the process of the technology first without bringing in the people first. So we're trying to change that. The last two, I'm sure, are probably the biggest pains in the butt at any agency and any organization: metrics and communication. What defines success? You know, always trying to get that answer. How do you know this is a success when it's done? Just completing it doesn't make it a success, right? And then what baseline did it exist so that you know when you're done that you actually improved something or you found an efficiency. The communication of the who, what, how, when, and the most important, the why. The why, the why, the why, starting with why, Simon Sinek, whatever you want to call it. The why is the most important, and I think we tend to miss out on that part. Employees want to know the why above anything else, right? If you're going to put me through this change, make it worth it and tell me why. So, and I'll talk a little bit about how we're meeting those challenges. So for the mission versus special projects, one of the things that we've been trying to do is tie the special project in a more meaningful way to mission work. You know, show the value, show the contribution that that special project is going to make, right? The other part of this is learning to say no. We say yes a lot, and we put ourselves in a bind with resources, and employees are fatigued, they're tired of change. So we have to learn how to say no. And we do so because some of those projects are great projects, but we don't have the time, we don't have the resources to do it, and we are sorry. We'll save it for another time, but the answer is no. Can we all say that together? No. Yeah, say it now. Meow. For putting people first, I think really being able to engage the employees at the very beginning. Sometimes when there's not a lot of information, we forget that we still should probably be saying something to our employees, that a change is coming, we're working on the details. It's okay to say, I don't know, but at least you're staying engaged with them. Use your surveys, use your listening sessions, use your focus groups, and that's one of the things that we've been doing a lot, to stay engaged and keep the people first. For the metrics, that's always going to be a struggle for us. We are going to try and recreate a performance office that was broken apart in October of last year. But we have to get past the general outcomes of create efficiency, you know, improve processes. Okay, well, what does that mean, right? Give me the real metrics. And the communication, we're fortunate to have me in my office, I know. But having an internal communication office and one that's centered on change management helps to make sure that the messaging is consistent. And we have a messaging for senior managers. We have messaging set out for, you know, our middle managers. And a lot of people forget that that middle management group is one of the most important groups in a change process, right? And then, of course, we have the messaging for our employees. So moving right along to successes, our strategic review teams and our implementation work groups are probably one of our greatest successes with change management. Since 2010, we've had 5 SRTs and over 20 IWGs with 5 to 10 people per group. So since 2010, at least 100 people, employees, have helped change our organization. And so they can see and own some of the great things that have happened. The creation of a continuous improvement manager role, that visual ownership of continuous improvement is huge, because now employees have somebody that they can look to, they can hold accountable for making sure that continuous improvement happens. That's been huge for us as well. And then the last part, just the fact that employees are generating these ideas, they feel safe bringing them to the surface. They're happy to be creative and to feel empowered to bring new ideas to the surface, whether it's through the listening sessions, our leadership development programs offer them opportunities to actually implement their own change ideas. And then, of course, surveys are employee generating idea functions or tools. So those things, I think, are most important. And continuous improvement for us would not happen if our employees are not generating the ideas. So that's one of our biggest successes. Add that, successes. Say that 5 times. The last little piece that I'll share with you is one of our newest, I'm claiming it as a success, is we created a project management office, and they will handle the kind of the technical administrative side of doing projects while we handle the people side. The partnership that we have with this office is awesome. So our mission, vision, values, the strategic thinking that happens kind of in that process that I showed you earlier, or in the little pockets around the organization, all of that drives, whether through the change management group or through our continuous improvement efforts, it drives the need to hit that bullseye target, which is strategic direction alignment through project execution. That's our bullseye. The first inner circle outside of that target, those are the 3 areas that we hope to kind of stay between project management and change management. So program management and portfolio management, in addition to project management. And then on the outside are all of our tools, whether it's the templates, mentoring. The mentoring is huge. That's where we're spending time with the idea generator to come up with a justification to help them move past just the initial idea, that brainstorm that they had. Metrics, collaboration, all of those pieces make project management and change management successful. So I'll just show you a couple of little tools that we have. On the left-hand side is our project management template list. So at the very top in the yellow, we break them down into categories of projects. So based on the scope of the project, how much it's going to cost, how many people are involved, the duration of the project, that determines how much of the project templates we're going to use. The far right is our largest category of projects, and so you can see they're using every single template that we have. We're going to make them use it. In this, we have a communications management strategy, and so On the right-hand side, there's 3 items. There's branding strategy. So talk to us about, what it is you're doing. Why is it so important? How do you brand it really within the organization? You don't have to use it with everything, but it does help when you're communicating a very large change. The communication plan identifies your audience, your stakeholders, who should be saying what and when. So that helps with that consistent messaging, the whys, the hows, the who's, and whens. And then finally on the bottom in the blue is our internal communications task specific list. So what is it that you're communicating? How are you going to deliver it? How often will you deliver it? Who's going to say it? And what audience are you addressing it to? And what didn't make this slide is, who approves it, because approving messages is very critical, right? So those are just a couple of the templates that we use. And outside of that, I'm done.
Oh, yay.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
I encourage you, if you want to learn more about our organization, check out honor.gov. And we are part of the Department of Interior, very small office in Interior. So also encourage you to look at DOI.gov so you can learn a little bit more about how the Department of Interior affects everything that you all might do as well. So, interesting.
All right, so we do have a couple questions here, and the first question is if this will be available online. And we are currently working on developing a website that we can not only host our presentations from our webinars, but possibly if other events are coming up or other tools, and that is in the stage of being developed. So for now, I encourage you, if you want specific information on one of the participation or on one of the presentations, to reach out directly to the presenter, or you can also reach out to me, Megan Brown, at meganannbrown@gmail.com, and that is going to be posted in the chat pane, as well as it's on a couple other slides. So definitely feel free to reach out to me about any questions, but also for information on that. And the other question, she said, or I'm not sure who this is from, but it says, I love how you scale the projects. Can you share your tools?
I have to look. Because the tools are under a different office, and so I don't know if they're internally generated just for Honor or if they've used toolkits from other places, but I'll check. And if I can, then yes, I'll
that was
share
going to
with
be
you
one
all.
of my questions too, because I was wanting to use one of your tools.
Yeah.
Out there. And I have a question too. How many people work in Honor?
So right now we have about 602 as of like Friday. We're up from 589. We usually I am very, yeah, that's one of my functions. I have 4 different hats. So we're usually around 645, 650.
Okay. Yeah. You're kind of low right now.
Yeah.
All right.
And Nichelle, I also have a question, and it's actually related a bit more to your the commit to progress piece. And I love how you have the mentoring time with idea generators. I think that's really admirable. How do you track the ideas that are best practices, and do you vet them, and like what's the process that goes on from more of a continuous improvement standpoint?
So the commit to progress piece. So I have one employee under me who is focused only on change management.
Okay.
And so what we've been doing is setting up an access database that we can track every idea that comes in from listening groups, focus groups, surveys, that type of thing. We track all of them and we butt them up against any of the implementation groups that have been started. Our leadership had a workshop in November and they created implementation plans around those ideas.
Cool.
So we track those ideas, how they're completed. We're working on getting a new tool. And if you all are anything like us, it takes forever to get any kind of new contracting or technology set up. We're working on a tool. It's the accelerator tool, and you can dump data into that, and it will tie all of your pieces together. It has surveys for leadership to test their readiness. It has surveys to employees to see how they think you're doing, how they think that they can contribute. It has surveys for and assessments for you as a change professional and how you're leading that effort. So we're working on getting that tool to supplement what what change management does and what the project managers are doing. The first, from 2010 to probably 2014, we didn't really have anything in place to track a lot of those ideas. So now it's just stored in an archive, and we're going to be going back and pulling that information into the new tool when we get it.
Okay.
So,
Cool. Thank you.
does that answer?
It does.
Great. We have a couple more questions here, and then if you have any questions after these next two, I would suggest holding those for the open forum, because we'll definitely have more time there, but I want to make sure that we give plenty of time to our next presenter as well. So first of these is, do you follow a particular change management model, like ProSci or?
No, because every change is different. So the accelerator tool will be, that'll be more of a model that we might follow in the future, but up to this point, we have not had a ProSci, we have not had, the Lane 6 Sigma, we haven't done anything specific. We've been working with bits and pieces of things to make it happen. Our change management office was just established in 2015, so.
Okay, and then this is a two-parter. It says, can you share more about what caused your organization to create a formal project management function, and how did you get your leadership team to see the need for this?
So a long time ago, way back when, we actually had a program management or project management office, and we stopped doing special projects that they felt they needed to keep that office, so they disbanded that office. In 2016, I believe it was, we had a lot of information technology projects that were going on, and we weren't really seeing the benefit of the money that we were spending. So we created a project management office to help manage those IT projects. Since we had that office, we said, well, we have a lot of other projects happening around the organization. They should do all of those project management type pieces. And so that's how that office kind of came about. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
How did you
Convention management?
Oh, how did commission management?
Yeah.
Well, I think when you start talking about money and where the benefit is, management gets involved really quick, and they see the benefit right away. So I think the money was the motivator for that piece.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And actually, I see a hand up on here. So I've unmuted you. It looks like you called in. Do you have a question? Dana? Okay, well, if you do have any other questions, hold those questions. Also, if you're having trouble with the audio, you can post them in the chat.
And can you hear me right now?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, this is Dana from TechStop. Just a quick question. You talked about metrics earlier. Do you have any metrics that you can share as far as what looks like success, et cetera, with the audience?
Depends on the project. I don't have any metrics with me right now, say for the like the IT projects that we have going on. In the past, for example, we had an implementation work group set on education and exposure of diversity and inclusion initiatives to employees. And so one of the ways that we measure that is through the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey they do annually. There are a number of questions that survey asks that we kind of use that to help gauge our metrics on that particular IWG. They closed out in 2015, but we're still able to measure the work that we do in educating and exposing our employees to diversity and inclusion initiatives through that survey. So that's one of those metrics that we're able to keep track of. The Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey actually provides a number of metrics for the employee engagement side that we're able to use. We have also had pulse surveys, so quarterly or every other month, we might send out just a couple of questions that either that Fed survey asked, or if we have particular ones that we need to know about, we'll use those as well.
Great, thank you, Nichelle. I do see there are some other questions in the chat pane, but we're going to hold those for the open forum so that we make sure that we respond respect everybody's time and hear from our next presenter, which is Carl.
Feel free to continue.
Well, I know you have a lot of good stuff for us too, so we're excited to hear from you. And let me just, I'm gonna actually give you remote control of this screen so that you can navigate the slides on your own.
Okay. Sounds good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so my name is Carl Greer. I work for Washington State Department of Transportation in Olympia, Washington, and I'm the organizational change manager. So I will say OCM a lot because it's a lot to say organizational change management. Let me see if I can get this to work by taking control. So it's not working on my end.
I'll move the slides for you for now.
Okay, sounds good.
Working, so just let me know when you want.
Okay, you can go to the next slide. So what I'm going to talk to you folks about today is give you a little bit of insight on WashDOT, talk a little about before we implemented change management within the agency and how we had to engage leaders to actually get that started, and what we're doing now to make that change stick. And then again, there's some questions after that. All right. I don't have voice.
Hold on one second. Carl, I think we have a problem with the audio.
Okay.
Can the other audience members hear Carl okay?
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Then go ahead, Carl.
All right, you can go to the next slide. So a little bit about WashDOT. We have 6,800 employees that span 6 regions across the state of Washington, and we actually operate the nation's largest highway marine system, which is our Washington State's Ferries. If you talk to a WashDOT person, they'll say we have 7 regions, and they consider headquarters Olympia region, but from headquarters, we just see it as 6 regions. All right, next slide. So starting an OCM team here's the team that I work with. There's me, and then we brought on some consultants because in the past it was just me. And with this project we're working on now, I said I needed some help. So we brought in some consultants, Brianna and Oli, and Wendy Carney, who provides oversight because she's did a similar project with another state agency. So we're doing lessons learned from her. But what we've really incorporated to help this agency is change agents. Some of you folks may call them change champions, but that's our go-to people around the state because I can't be everywhere, the team can't be everywhere. And if you see that research, messages are better received from people that you're familiar with or trusted folks. So we have change agents spread throughout the state. And then our power users, based on what kind of project we're working on, our power users, we look at them as the go-to people. So this current project we're working on is an IT project, switching from paper timesheets, which may be weird to folks, but yes, we still use paper to track our time and leave. So we're switching, and those power users will be the folks who have in-depth knowledge of the system. And then again, trainers. But the project advocates are new to DOT because when we went out and did our stakeholder assessments, part of what I'll talk about in a little bit is that the regional administrators, the leaders in each of those regions were actually excited that we're actually coming out and talking to them, getting their input. So they said, we can't be a change agent. We don't have time. We can't be a power user or trainer, but we want to support this change management effort in any way we can. So we developed this project advocate group, which are majority of the leaders around the state. And we give them information like talking points to take to their meetings and keep them up to speed so they can continue the message, not only about change management, but any kind of project that's involved, either agency-wide or just for their program. So that's been new for DOT, and that's where change management is actually starting to take off more within the agency because those leaders are starting to buy in, and it has helped our movement. Next slide. So a little bit before implementing OCM, most state governments, we deal with a lot of change fatigue because, we get requests not only from within the agencies, but legislatures, citizens of Washington. So we're in a constant change. And basically, I just say it's the nature of the beast. Once you get into state government, you'll deal with a lot of change. So our goal is to say, how can we help with that change fatigue? Because we actually started losing quite a few quality staff because we were going through so much change. So we said we needed to see how we can help with that. So bringing in change management helped with that, helped cut down on some of the change fatigue and giving them some tools to use. All right, next one. So part of that, it was funny, Nichelle mentioned it earlier, I actually work for the communications office. My manager is the assistant communications director, and she's actually certified, ProSci certified, and she's a big advocate for change management. But as I talked about a little bit earlier, 6,800 employees that span the state of Washington that work on vessels, actually communicating with them about different changes that were going on was a struggle because, our typical way was using email or high-level meetings or quick notices. And quick notices are basically a document that go out to the vessels and is posted on a board for people to read. But what kind of time do you have to actually go through and read a document while you're making sure that this ferry is traversing safely across the ocean? So it was like we needed to find a better way to do that. And we also had limited opportunity for employees to give feedback. They'd give feedback to their manager or supervisor or coworkers, but that never worked its way back up. So we had to think of ways, how can we give staff opportunity to give feedback? All right. So part of this also was staff feeling that change was forced upon them without adequate ways of giving feedback. So one of the things that we did, we implemented an email inbox for whatever project's going on. Staff can submit questions, comments, thoughts, whatever to that email inbox. And we have somebody that actually monitors that. And if we don't know the question, like Michelle said earlier, we say, I don't know, but we'll find the answer for you. Instead of giving out that false information, we say, I don't know. Part of at least working here at WashDOT, people wanted to give feedback, but they wanted to do it anonymously. So we use SurveyMonkey to set up a way that they can give feedback or submit questions and comments that way without, worry about any kind of repercussions, not that they ever suffered any. We've actually got some valued information through that SurveyMonkey. And like I said, we're working on this IT project, going from paper timesheets to an electronic system. And one of the messages that came through the anonymous inbox, it wasn't the best message to read. When I read it, or the team and I read it, I was like, wow, this person's really upset and they're saying some things in this email that I understand they want to be anonymous. But, we were trained, or we look at every message that come in, and what we're able to decipher from that message is that, we actually have people that work here at WashDOT that their job does not involve them using a computer, and they have flip phones. And when they get home, they actually don't use a computer. So, that their computer knowledge is limited. And because of that email inbox or that anonymous inbox, we were able to say, hey, we need to take a step back and look at this. So this project, what do we need to do to get the people prepared to be successful moving forward? Because one size does not fit all. We had to make sure that people who don't use computers or not computer savvy, how do we get them up to speed? So we worked on developing a basic computer training class for those folks that will roll out once we get closer to their implementation. Next slide. So part of that was, to get buy-in on OCM or start developing an OCM office, we had to engage our leadership, and we had to bring in some processes and tools to help those people. And the key thing for leaders is that how do we be successful? How do we get that return on investment? What's that speed of adoption? So, we sat down and had that conversation with them. And we also let them know that, hey, DOT is not just a building, it's the people of DOT. So if we have success here at DOT, it's based on the people. And currently we do a great job of preparing our customers for change And the thought was, hey, we need to do a great job of preparing our staff for change also. So the stuff we're doing for our customers outside the building, we need to start doing that inside the building. So speaking in their language, getting them to understand and buy in, it was an aha moment for them. It says, yes, we need to make sure that our staff is successful also. Next slide. So part of that, they really didn't understand what change management was. So we just used some ProSci research and said, hey, even if we do it poor because we're starting off and we started on this project late with change management, you know, we can still have some success. And that success will build based off of how much time and investment we put into change management. That will build over time to more projects, and we'll be able to see that speed of adoption and return on investment that you folks are looking for. So again, speaking in their language, they wanted to see some data behind it, so we used some ProSci data for them. Next slide. We also had to explain to them, you know, the what's in it for me, the WIFMs. It's great to share what the WIFM is for the agency, but to get people to buy in, sometimes that's not important to them. They want to know what their WIFMs are and how that's going to work for them as we move forward. So we had to say, hey, let's share your WIFMs, but let's actually reach out to the people. Let's go have conversations with them to identify what their WIFMs are based off whatever that project is. And that actually started to turn the tide. So instead of just doing this from top down, we actually started getting staff buying in. So we're getting staff saying, hey, we want more of this change management stuff. And management saying, hey, how do we get more involved? What do you need from us to make this successful? Next slide. So again, we said we use AdCar as our base. ProSci, it's a great tool, and AdCar was simple for executives and leaders and staff to understand. So that's why we use it as our base, but we also explain within those different steps of AdCar, there's different tools that we use. You know, for the awareness piece, we do emails, we actually go out and talk to people, we have a web page. We just do different tools that it's to make sure that we're moving along that line. And again, for us, AdCar, the process there was easy to understand, especially for those folks who don't understand change management. Next slide. So making it stick, part of that was going out to interview our stakeholders saying, hey, you know, you heard a little bit about change management. What is it that you folks are looking for as we continue down, not only developing this office, but different projects that come along? So part of that, they said, you know, participation. Being here in Olympia, and we have this office spread out across the state, they said, hey, you know, you folks that sit in the office really don't understand what we do. We want you to come out and participate in our world, get a better understanding of what we do, how we do it. So when you roll out these projects, you're taking us into consideration also. And they also wanted to be able to participate also on projects, because in the past we would say, hey, you know, you're over in Spokane, this is a headquarters-driven project. We'll give you information, send us information that you want, but you know, it was hard for them to participate. They also wanted that communication piece, which goes back to having those folks that work on a vessel. You know, what's the best way to communicate with them, because their connectivity and the lack of computers on those vessels, email is not a great way of doing it. So they wanted us to do a different way of communicating that fits their needs. And also make it timely and relevant. We do a lot of communications here, working in the communications office. But they were saying, hey, sometimes you guys over-communicate, so, you know, make it timely, make it relevant. And then the training piece of that was, we did a lot of training here at WashDOT where we said, hey, you come to us and we'll deliver training. But again, coming from Spokane, which is a 6-hour drive to Olympia, we said we need to change that up. We actually need to start taking training out to them. We need to go meet them where they're at. And then the support piece of that was building those teams, those change agents, those power users, those project advocates out where they're at, instead of, you know, if them having to rely on headquarters staff to be the go-to people, the experts within the area. And that's, again, that's made a big change for us because people are more engaged. And again, it goes back to getting those executives wanting to be involved. Next slide. So also part of that was building trust and credibility, because again, you know, they said a lot of stuff is being pushed on us. Headquarters, it's rare that you come out and talk to us and find out how we do or what we do. So the other piece of that was we took the view of walking a mile in their shoes, which means we go out to them. So the team and I, we travel around the state, sit with them, talk to them. We get some leaders and sponsors, steering committee folks to actually come with us to find out what it is they do. And most recently on this project, some of the team has gone out to different locations, and they've taken them on tours of the different sheds out there. They've showed them the different trucks and things they use when they plow the snow in the pass. We've gone to Washington State Ferries, and they've actually taken us on tours of the vessel down in the engine room. And I'm a water guy, so that was cool to me. The only thing is they wouldn't let me drive a ferry across the water. Still working on that, but again, it was getting out to learn what they do. One time when I was traveling over to Yakima through the pass, they were actually building this snow bridge, and it had these holes in the mountain, and I asked what that was for, and they said it was, that's what they use to stick dynamite and blow up the rocks. And, you know, wanting to walk a mile in their shoes, I asked if I could do that, and they said no. You're not qualified to do that. But I said, well, you know, I'm trying to walk a mile in your shoes and get a better understanding. They said the best you can do is put on a hard hat and watch from a distance. So I took that. But again, it's going out, having that engagement with them, understanding what they do, helping them see how these different projects and how this change fits what they do on a day-to-day basis, and how, and it helped us build our plans moving forward. Next slide. So part of that, again, we implemented methods of stakeholders or staff to give feedback, ask questions. We do a lot of road shows where we actually go out, because we found that people actually want to talk to someone. You know, they're good with submitting emails or anonymous things to the group, but they're more engaged when we actually go out. So getting leaders out on the road for 3 or 4 days, getting the team, OCM team out on the road for 3 or 4 days, and meeting the people where they're at, having them ask us questions, giving them those real-time feedback, and being able to say in front of them, hey, I don't know, or hey, we didn't think about that, or hey, you know, let us know what's going on. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? Being in front of them has made a huge change in making this change management effort we're doing stick. Next slide. So before implementation, we had 3 certified practitioners, minimal agency support. Executives were like, you know, we heard about this change around, so a lot of the touchy-feely stuff. I'm fine with change, so I'm not understanding why other people aren't, but we had to explain to them, you know, the reasons. Again, it's going back to those roofings. And even though you're fine with change, there are people within the agency that are not fine with change. So after going down these paths, implementing some tools, showing how change management worked on smaller projects, we now have 12 certified practitioners. We actually have some senior leadership support, and one senior leader actually takes the ad card book and did a book club with it, and they sat down, went through it, asked questions, etc. We're providing OCM training to staff, OCM training to managers and supervisors. Our Officer of Chief Information for the state of Washington is now saying, hey, DOT, you're going through these implementations. We want to see a change management plan. So again, that's that manager support. We've identified and shared with the managers. They always thought that, you know, change management is just for IT projects. But we said, hey, you know, you can do it for IT projects. We just went through an agency reorg. We showed how it could work on an agency reorg. We're actually doing some culture change, working on these 3 projects. One is practical solutions, workforce development, and inclusion. And they're saying, hey, we need change management on all 3 of these projects. So they're seeing the benefit of change management, not just for IT projects. Our lean office, you know, they're certified as practitioners, and in their Greenbelt training, they actually have a portion where they actually talk about change management and use the buzzwords, but get people to understand as we're going through these lean transformations, you know, we do need someone or a group of people actually doing some change management around it also. Next slide. So I guess that's all I got out there. There's my information. Some takeaways for me, if I could share with you folks, is being persistent. If you're struggling getting management or leadership to buy into change management, just be persistent. Again, it's talking in their language. Part of it was talking in their language and actually doing smaller projects so they could see how it worked. And then develop that base method. I've talked to other groups and worked with other places where they try to incorporate 3 or 4 different methods, and it was like, well, let's find one. Use that as your base and use different tools and continue to collaborate. I mean, I'd give a shout out to CDOT. They do a great job of collaborating. Once I started here, I was able to reach out to them to give me some insight. Department of Corrections here does a great job. Labor and Industry does a great job. Employment Security does a great job. So it's that collaboration with different offices and not thinking that, hey, DOT, we're the only way. We know the best way. I say no. We have a good way of doing it, but we still need to collaborate with others like you folks on different things and to way to make us better. So again, that's what I have to share with you folks. And I actually have some questions for you, but I'll wait for that question and answer session. Questions?
Carl, thank you so much. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So our first question says, you mentioned Washoe did a great external resident change management. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Are there any information, best practices you share or can point to?
Yeah, so I know what we do a lot here at WashDOT. It's inclusion. We're actually putting a name to it now. Inclusion, we reach out to different communities that we're either building roads in or making some kind of changes. And we actually get their input. We go to town halls, we ask questions, we show them diagrams, we develop I won't say a sponsor network, but we develop a coalition of people that we reach out to and say, hey, what are the things you folks want to hear? What are you looking for? You know, what other areas can we reach out to? So it's actually going out to them. And we've been doing that for a long time here at WashDOT, going out to the different communities, figuring out how it's going to affect them. But again, it goes back to we didn't do that. We didn't do so well internally. But yes, that's one thing I have to give WashDOT kudos to. When it deals with our external customers, they do a good job of going out and meeting with them and answering the tough questions and hearing the tough feedback that things aren't so good, and we have some heartburn over past projects that's done. So that's what they do. They go out and what I say is they face the fire.
Mm-hmm. So I have another question. You've talked a lot about really going out and getting with the people one-on-one. What percentage of your time do you think you're just out in the field with the workers?
So this project, I think we went on the road for like a month and a half. We spent traveling around the state, some days holding what we called kickoffs or road shows, 3 or 4 in a day. So we did a lot of time on the road. I'd say a month and a half. We've kind of scaled it back because we're in the process now of developing training. But the team and I, so that was with the executives in the OCM team. The OCM team and I, we actually spend, she's out of 5 days. I think we probably spend 3 days out of the week meeting with people, getting feedback, responding to emails, doing training. We're going through a process right now where we're doing some sessions with managers and supervisors. So I say three days a week we're out with the people. And I'm not running for office, but yes, we're out with the people.
Great. So another question is, I've heard a few groups talk about strategic planning, lean or continuous improvement, performance management, and change management. I'd be interested to see how different agencies organize the work in these areas and how you collaborate.
So I know for us, our lean office does a great job, and what they do is they'll shoot me an email and say, hey, Carl, we got this lean process improvement going on, and they'll get the ball rolling because, again, it's just myself and 2 other folks right now. Get the ball rolling, talking about change management, but they'll reach out to us for input on things that are going on. Most recently, they're working on a project, and they said, hey, Carl, when do you think we should start doing communications? So we're at that point where it's like, hey, lean folks are trained on change management. Sometimes they will do some change management, but the majority of the time they'll shove it over to myself and the team to work on it and meet with the people to do it that way. Same thing with project management here. Depending on the size of what's going on, they'll shove it out to us, or I won't say shove it, but because we enjoy doing it, but they reach out to us and say, hey, we got this going on. What kind of help can you give us? If you can't give us help, can you provide oversight and train some of the people that we'll be doing the change management piece of it.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have another question, and then we're going to open it to the open forum. We do have it scheduled to go to 10:15, so I hope you all will hang in there for the open forum piece of it. So this question says, what will need to occur to have your positions switch from consultants to permanent staff?
So we're actually in the process of that. Just recently, about 2 weeks ago, we submitted a budget request to develop an office and hire permanent staff. The consultants have been great, and one of them is sitting here with me now, but they have been great. But to continue to build and continue to do what we need to do here at DOT based off all our projects that are coming in, we need to expand, and they're starting to realize that. So we just submitted a budget request to actually develop an office where we would use consultants on a sparingly basis, but a majority of it will be WSDOT staff. So we are in that process. And again, it took that persistence to show them how change management works, and staff going to their manager, supervisor, saying, hey, we want more of that change management. How do I get involved? How do I get trained? And again, now that we're up to 12 certified people, I get emails all the time saying, hey, how do I get certified? When's the next training? Because staff sees the value in it. Managers are saying, yes, I want my staff to go through this. So it's just taken that to be able to submit that budget request and say, hey, here's what the people are wanting. So how do we go about doing that?
Excellent. Thank you, Carl.
You're welcome.
With that, we're going to move on to our open forum. There is all of our contact information. I know some of you have asked about the slides, or if you have more questions for our presenters, please take note of the contact information. This session has also been recorded, so we will have that as well. Just let us know, and then hopefully, well, for one thing, be looking for a survey that's going to be coming out, and also very soon we'll have a website where you can find all of this information. So to get us started with our open forum, I know we have another question for Nichelle.
Oh boy.
How were you able to define action and or engagement items for the leadership?
So we did so this particular engagement item and action items for the leadership, it came from a month-long series of focus groups that were listening sessions that we did with employees, and it was about a reorganization. We did one of the largest reorganizations that we've done in quite some time, so we had listening sessions, and as with any listening session, employees tend to bring all of their problems, not just those associated with the reorg. So we got, I think it was probably 200 to 300 at least ideas and recommendations. So we put them into themes. We had communication was our largest, training was our next largest, and then a group of others. So my office and the continuous improvement manager got together. We took the training and the communication ideas to where our middle managers and up, we had the leadership forum for those folks, and they came up with ideas on how to implement the ideas that employees are concerned that they had. That middle management group actually came up with the ideas. So we've now taken that over. Some of those ideas were picked up by folks who are participating in the leadership development program. The rest of them we're going to prioritize through our regular prioritization process to see when we can have that happen. We're, again, trying to not say yes to everything. We know it can kind of overextend ourselves, but what can we lump together? What's not relevant anymore, because it's been almost a year now. We know we have a new change coming, so will some of those things fit into the new change? So my office is managing the rest of those ideas. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yes, thank you. And are there any other questions or comments at this time?
I have one actually. So in terms of the importance of saying no, how do you say that when you might not be the one who's in charge of deciding?
Oh, I don't say no.
Oh.
I say yes, yes, yes. So my role is just to make sure that whatever they're bringing forward is appropriate and answers the questions that will most likely be asked. So the cost benefit analysis, the whys, justifying all of that stuff. That's my role. The senior managers, so our program managers and our senior executive service, they are the ones who actually make the decisions. So I just make sure that they're prepared for that group. And that body is the decision maker.
Okay.
But we will encourage them one way or another. We'll let them know because the personnel, the number of people we have on board is under my shop. So we'll let them know how many people we have on board. The program areas will talk about what projects they have going on and whether they have the resources to commit to that project.
Okay, yeah, thank you. This is Janine Bahutin with CDOT, and I have a question for you, Carl. I'm so curious about the email inbox for projects. Can you talk a little bit about the overall response you've received and whether you're planning on continuing or expanding that?
Yeah, so the overall response has been great. I mean, it's given staff from around the state to submit their questions, their thoughts, and in the beginning of each project, I mean, because they don't know a lot what's going on, we're flooded. And so, again, the three of us man that email inbox over time. But I notice as they begin to learn more, get a better understanding of what's going on, the questions die down. But yes, we plan on continually expanding it. We have a web page out there also. What we do is we gather those questions, put them on the web page, but we've also developed these things we call easy sheets. And what we use those for taking some of the most important information that we want to share with staff. And we put it out on the web page, but we also give it to our sponsors and steering committee because they've developed what we call communication buddies, their peers around the state that they actually communicate with. So instead of having, the executives going out to the emails or to the web page constantly, they're able to get these easy sheets each month and share that with their staff. Folks really like the anonymous Survey Monkey thing because that was the one that was really hopping when we first put it out there. There was a lot of questions, concerns, a lot of upset folks, and they really didn't have a way to vent that. We're always thinking there was some kind of repercussions that may come. But yes, we continue to use that for the projects that I'm involved in. We continue to use that, and we'll continue to expand it once we start getting involved in more projects to come.
Great, thank you.
Can I chime in the thing about no? That was actually a struggle here for a little bit because of myself. I have no problem saying no, but what it came around communication plans. Everybody thought that, hey, why do change management? We can just do it with a communication plan. And to tell them no, that's not it. They kind of looked at me sideways a little bit, but I had to explain to them. So they've actually gotten used to hearing no because they understand that, they're still learning. Not that I'm the expert, but they're still learning. And my job is to direct them in the right way of doing these kind of things.
And on top of that, we also have to be careful when we say no to really explain why. Not no just because, not no because this is how we've done it before. Give them a valid reason. That's one of our struggles as well. They're really good at saying no now, but not providing the real reason why. So that's a huge piece if you kind of adopt that mentality.
Exactly.
Great, thanks for that. And Carl, you said you have some questions?
I do. So to the folks that have called in, so what are some of the struggles or roadblocks you folks have run into if you don't have a change management office? What are some of the roadblocks you're running into that's hampering that or that's putting that on pause?
Anybody? Yeah, remind you, they have to unmute or type. Either way.
while we're waiting for answers. I guess the second part of that is
So William says leadership not understanding the need, which I think you both spoke to, and so I appreciate hearing that. Do you have any other suggestions for that?
for me, again, it goes back to persistence and actually sitting down with them face to face and having the conversation. And you know, one time I used with them on them, what's in it for me. You know, there was a project going on, and they said, well, we don't have the time or resources to invest in change management. I said, well, what's in it for you? And they were like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what is in it for you? You know, what happens if this doesn't go the way you planned? And they were like, well, you know, it won't go well. You know, there'll definitely be some pushback from leaders above me. And I said, well, then don't you think you need to engage your people on what this looks like? Because one of the things that we've noticed is that people here at WashDOT have had a hard time connecting the different projects or different things that we're implementing, connecting it to their job. Example is this practical solution things we're going through. You know, it's mainly focused on our engineers and our planners and construction folks, but it's supposed to be an enterprise-wide or agency-wide thing. And the accounting office, which I used to work in, as well, how does that apply to me? How does that apply to my job? So getting them to understand, that's how folks want to, that's how part of how you get folks to buy in is understanding how these changes connect to their job and getting that feedback from them instead of continually pushing it out on them. So having those one-on-one conversations, I call them crucial conversations sometimes, but yeah, having those conversations.
Thank you for that, Carl. So I know that Chandra and probably some others wanted a repeat of that question, which was, what kind of barriers and obstacles are you running into if you're not using change management in your organization?
Or change management office.
Or if you don't have a change management office in your organization. And some other comments on that include the cascading information down to the frontline employees, finding a sponsor and leadership who's willing to dedicate resources and budget requests, and let's see, limited application of change management, focusing only on communication and training. And is that another question? Okay. Any thoughts on those topics?
What was the last one that you read?
Just focusing on communication and training only.
I think the hard part about focusing only on communication chain and training is that sometimes you still miss the gaps or the pain points that people have. Like if you're training, you're telling people what they need to, like, you're telling them about it rather than also getting their feelings and how they learn about it, how they hear about it. And the same thing for communication. Sometimes we only communicate in one or two ways, and it doesn't reach the people that it needs to reach. So, so speaking a lot to Carl's point about, you know, walking in their shoes, you know, getting out there one-on-ones. I have found that it's not the Broadway productions that win people over, it's the one-on-one conversations, the water cooler conversations, you know, the walking down the hall, the walk around management. That has been more successful than a Broadway, hey, we're changing, let's have a party. Like that often sometimes does a little more damage than the one-on-ones do, you know. So I think you do have to be careful with only relying on communication and only relying on training.
Great, so we have another comment and a couple more questions. We're getting to the end of our time, but someone says, great point, Carl. I use this analogy. Insurance is betting against your investment, attempting to protect from an expected failure. Change management is protecting your investment and ensuring that it works. That is a great analogy. And the final questions is, what have you done to train staff, and what have others done for the licenses?
For the change management licensing? I think that one's
So,
might be for you, Carl.
Yeah, I think that is.
okay, so right now, WashDOT doesn't have a license. That's part of our budget request, because I went through the train the trainer certification, and it was like, well, we need a license now because there's some great tools out there. But again, it's getting the leaders to buy in, and we're all tight on budget right now, so they're looking into that. But again, the budget piece of that was what they did is instead of saying, hey, we're going to, at least for these couple of projects that I just recently worked on, was they said this is an enterprise-wide project. So they went to each different program and said, you need to contribute to, you know, the OCM effort to this, because there was an overall budget for OCM staff, but there wasn't for like materials or travel. So they reached out to the different programs and said you needed to contribute. They asked me what I thought, and of course, you know, I'm a think high, being a former accountant, and they said, well, let's whittle it down. But again, it was just, for this, it was actually reaching out to the different programs to buy in. And we put our budget package together based off of the different dollars, based off of different projects, and those kind of things. Because again, when you think about OCM and working on projects, what I've noticed is that when they're putting those budget packages together, they always don't think about the travel piece of it and also the training piece of it, you know, printing materials, developing materials, etc. You know, computer-based training, what do you need for that? You know, training environments. They don't think about that piece. So having that conversations off of lessons learned and continually moving that forward has actually helped with us put our package together.
Great. Let's finish with this final question on how do you sell the budget, and kind of what format does that take when you present it?
Well, for honor, so I don't have to sell too much because I'm close enough to my director, deputy director. We're a lot smaller than you all probably are. So I could just walk across the street and go straight into my director's office and say, hey, I need some money, you know, and they support it enough. They understand that it's important enough now, after having gone through some problem areas in the past. They see the value and benefit of it. So it's just a matter of me being able to show, you know, what is the budget going for? Is it going for tools? Is it going for subscriptions? You know, travel, whatever it is, and then putting in their hand. Now that might change because our budgets are decreasing moving into next year because of, you know, the whole federal thing going on. So we're not as rich as we used to be.
Okay, I think with that, we'll go ahead and close up. Thank you all for being here today. It was really fun and exciting, and it's great to hear all the great information from our presenters, and also the input from some of our audience members as well. Going forward, we are definitely going to be sending out a survey. One of the things that we're interested in doing is having kind of a fun name to unify us, and something that's an easy acronym. Here's some of the ideas that we've come up with so far, and of course we're going to need to double check any patenting and how many other groups exist with these names to try and come up with something kind of unique. But we really want to hear your ideas so that we can let you all vote on something that you like. So right now we've come up with the Change Makers, Change Commons, iChange Group, the Game Changers, Benefits Realized Community of Practice, the Change Loop, and Professional Change Makers. And that part is for you to come up with. Again, feel free to reach out anytime and be looking for that survey. All right, have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. You did it.
Okay, good.